best ski racers have an upper body that contributes rather than interferes with the actions of the lower body. The upper body of the best skiers appears not to move, but provides an anchor or stable foundation for the lower body to rotate and hinge against. Excess and useless movements disrupt and ultimately get in the way of the desired movements of the lower body. The ski racer must have an upper body that does not disrupt the actions of the lower body.
The upper body has to be stable and solid. If we start to turn the upper body more than necessary, it's going to take us out of balance so that we cannot put the pressure in the fall line, or it's going to make us have difficulty maintaining our snow contact. All things that are going to lead to slower skiing.
Upper body stabilization is really important in slalom because if you happen to get a little out of whack with your upper body, with your arms or your head or whatever it is, then it can throw your entire turn off, or multiple turns in a row. So you want to make sure that the first thing you can do when you get in the course is you get your solid upper body position and you tighten your core and you keep that the whole way down the course. And then that just leaves room for you to do stuff with your legs that everybody else can't do because they're worried about why their hand is like way back here in the flush, So make sure that everything is together and tight and moving forward, moving down the hill.
The upper body has the head, arms, torso, and pelvis. The lower body consists of the legs down to the feet. Articulation between the upper and lower body occurs in the hip. The hip is the common term for the head of the femur or upper leg bone and the acetabulum or hip socket. This ball and socket joint is the key to the multidimensional options available to the hip. It can flex and extend, abduct and adduct, and rotate. With its strength and multiple degrees of freedom, this joint could arguably be the most important joint in the skier's body. Separating the upper and lower body is possible due to the articulation of the hip. When the ski racer ties or binds up this joint, they limit the skiing options available and increase time between turns.
When talking about upper body discipline, we also need to understand the concept that there's a separation between the upper body and lower body. That separation occurs from the pelvis up to the shoulders and from the femur down to the ankles. That separation is the femur inside the hip joint moving. Often when we focused on this, it's been from like kind of the waist up and from the waist down. But it's really, think about it as the femur moving inside the hip socket.
This upper-lower body separation is what permits the ski racer to look or face down the hill, essential to fast slalom turns. The body parts that are facing down the hill include the entire upper body and, most importantly, the pelvis. An important feature of an athletic skier is this separation. Without it, they would ski like a robot, facing left after a left turn, facing right after a right turn. So how is this separation achieved? Imagine the nut is the pelvis and the bolt is the leg. I can turn the bolt in the nut just like I can turn the leg in the pelvis. This is possible because I'm holding the nut with my other hand. If I let go of the nut and turn the bolt, the nut moves with it. The only way I can turn the bolt without the nut moving is to hold on to the nut, or in other words, provide a torque to the nut. The nut will look quiet, a la a quiet upper body. when the torque of the upper body equals the torque of the lower body, or in this case, the torque of the bolt equaling the torque on the nut. This is exactly what happens when the upper body looks quiet, or what we refer to as upper body discipline. This is the involvement of the upper body. While the legs rotate left, the pelvis and the rest of the upper body rotate right. When the torque of rotating left and the torque of rotating right are equal, the upper body appears quiet or stable with the surroundings. The upper body, while looking quiet, is actually quite active. Its stability comes from not just its orientation, but its contribution to the leg steering of the lower body. This leg steering can be open chain or closed chain action. An example of an open chain action is when the skis are redirected. While we want the skier to keep their skis on and engaged in the snow, this is not always possible. For whatever reason, when the skis need to be turned quicker than ideal, the skier's only choice is to release them from the snow so they can be redirected. Without the snow to create a turning impetus, the lower body's only option is to turn against or counter the upper body. An active, disciplined upper body allows the skier to impart and control the magnitude and timing of this open chain leg steering. Conversely, a closed chain event is found when there is uninterrupted ski-snow contact. This smooth flow from turn to turn is possible because the upper body, think pelvis, rotates on top of the femur, keeping the skis on the snow during turns that last 85/100ths of a second is only possible with rapid movements that are very precise. Any extra upper body articulation that does not contribute to the rotation of the legs creates inefficient movements that take time. Time the ski racer cannot afford. Discipline of the upper body implies that there is an intent. This would mean that there are heuristics or guidelines that must be acknowledged. Specifically, the hands and arms must remain in front and independent of the upper body. The upper body must rotate opposite the lower body. The upper body angulates to maintain outside ski dominance. Skillfulness is demonstrated by the separation of body parts. This separation characteristic is probably most evident in slalom and exemplified by upper and lower body separation. But slalom has another degree of separation that is also important. That is the arm or arms separating from the upper body. A disciplined upper body will also be essential for efficient gate clearing. The best ski racers demonstrate upper body arm separation along with the more common upper-lower body separation. Watching good upper body arm separation is not very eventful. That is because the separation of the two body parts are not influencing each other. The ski racers' skis seem to be detached from the movements of their hands and arms. When the arm does not disassociate itself from the torso, the entire body performs as one unit. This is often seen in overreaching to block or clear the gate. The hand and arm essentially meld with the upper body, taking it along for the ride at gate contact. Although in certain instances we will see elite ski racers reach with their shoulder girdle, it is not recommended for aspiring ski racers to mimic. The elite ski racer is able to further separate their shoulder girdle from their spine and cheat a few centimeters out of the gate clear. For the less elite ski racer, this exaggerated arm motion disrupts the upper body by creating excess upper body rotation that is transferred to the lower body. The latissimus dorsi muscle has a connection on the upper arm and on the pelvis. Any extreme movements of the arm will be transferred to the pelvis. When the ski racer overreaches with the shoulder girdle and arm, the latissimus dorsi muscle pulls or rotates the pelvis in the same direction. This pelvis rotation makes it difficult to angulate and hold an edge. Overreaching can also disrupt fore-aft pressure on the ski by transferring pressure forward when pressure should be moving aftward. The disciplined upper body establishes a base of support. Balance in skiing is a rather upside-down proposition. In most sports, balance hinges from the ground. The baseball pitcher does this from the rubber on the pitching mound. The pitching mound or rubber provides the impetus for the pitcher to push off against to get maximum control and velocity when throwing. Without this anchor to the ground, the throw can become very tenuous. The slalom skier must make moves with very little and sometimes no support from the ground, as mentioned in the open kinetic chain description. The support the ski racer needs comes from their upper body, creating stability through position and internal muscular tension. Discipline of the upper body is a double-edged sword. It must provide stability for the lower body, but at the same time, it must separate itself from the lower body. So the upper body is not just a passenger going along for a ride, but a contributor, supplying stability and freedom so the lower body can perform its job.